Welcome to episode number 10 and our last episode of season 1 of Renewables Unscripted, a show where we talk to entrepreneurs who are making and building our decarbonization future. So who are we talking to today, James?
We are talking to Alain Brisebois, the president of CWP Energy. He's creating a set of tools to help decarbonize the world and bringing us to the next generation of PPAs and how we manage energy in the future.
Alain, welcome first and foremost. And more importantly, can you take a few minutes or 1 minute rather, and tell us about CWP Energy, what you guys are currently doing, and then we can talk about the journey behind it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to talk about our business and our journey. It's, as you know, and most of your guests on the show, it's not linear. So it's full of different events, surprises, and outcomes. So CWP Energy was founded in 2012 by my partner, Philip. It was originally a trading business on the physical side of things, so moving power in and out of different markets. I joined in 2015 with the mandate of scaling the business, making it present in all ISOs and making sure we have a sound foundation for growth and proper risk management practice. So I came in with the intention of building a business plan so that we can grow this business to be one of the top North American trading companies. When I got in, I saw this wave of renewable energy getting onto the grid, changing the dynamics. I also saw a severe lack of innovation in terms of IT processes and data manipulation. So I saw a huge opportunity in there. So we rapidly became a top aggregator of data across all markets and started using that to make algorithmic decisions. So systematic and automatic decision making on the markets on a daily basis. So we had some success there. We are now about 30 people across 3 countries with automatic systematic decision making ranging from 40 to 70% of the business depending on the year. So it's been quite the journey. Now what we're doing is that side of business is continuing to grow, but we're also trying to productize our expertise in our platform in order to help the decarbonization movement to move along by putting that in the hands of customers that are mainly renewable asset owners that have to navigate the congestion risk, basis risk, and making sure they properly actively manage their renewable assets. So that's what we're doing.
I'm going to stop you a little bit. There's a lot to unpack there first and foremost. So let me try to break this down a little bit. So you came in with a mandate to scale, right? And starting something is very different than scaling something. And I think you have some experience there. So are you talking about bringing kind of that you'd say now 40 to 70% of your trading volume is done through AI of sorts, so machine-based processing there. So where was that when you started? And is it, I guess it's zero. Is that?
Not only it was zero, no one believed in it. Like at the beginning when you talked about that project, they said, hey, this is not bonds or equities. It's not going to work with energy. You know, I've lived through those conversations many times and you know, I strongly disagree with that, and we pushed on. And so we needed to do some proof of concept, started really, really small, mainly doing stuff ourselves with a computer that couldn't crash over the weekend. I remember the first couple of backtests we made was taking about 7 days. And if you had to come in on a Monday and you lose power in the building, well, you have to start over again. So that was our start with that. And we grew from there. We hired a guy that with a government grant program that made us a bit better. And then we have some solid proof of concept there. So we made into a team and continue to deploy efforts and money there.
So you're talking about how you didn't have buy-in. Was that internally or was that from the market? Was this a So you had to convince the market you really had a solution and a problem to solve, or was this the people with the money were like, is this really going to work in the market?
Yeah, a little bit of both, I need to say. I think the guys that were there, because the thing with energy trading, it's been done for the same way for a very long time. So they didn't really have incentive to change how they were doing things. It wasn't intermittent back then. It wasn't super digital. It was easy to manage with spreadsheets, and you could do very successfully the same thing for a very long time. But that always comes to an end, right? And I think I came in the market where we were at that inflection point. And having seen that digitalization in other asset classes, like bonds and equities, I said, man, this is going to happen to energy for sure. So I tried it anyway, because I'm not very good with no as an answer. So I'm a bit stubborn there.
But you first did it to serve yourself. So I guess you're the first client of your own tech to some extent, which is always a good starting point to validate and kind of grow kind of a solution for internal needs, which you then probably marketed as, hey, we're AI supported. I don't know what the exact terminology you use on the market.
We do, but we try to be careful with AI, because everybody throws it out there, right? AI is in everything. You buy a toaster and there's going to be AI in it. So you need to be very careful about how you use it, but we use it and risk our own capital with the tech that we built. It's proven its success. We're having year-over-year improvement in it. And now we're also using that track record to say to people that are facing the same risk on their accounts, you can use this and be a bit better.
So I love that. I love that framing. I'm not just a salesman. I'm also a client. Like, it's the old hair club for men argument.
Yeah, exactly.
I myself with that, but which makes it a really interesting proposition when you go to market and you're saying, well, we're coming in alongside you. How has that played out for yourself in building that reputation and going? Has it been really driving that?
Yes, a little bit. I think and just for clarity, CWP Energy Solution is the client-facing side of the business, and that's relatively new. It's a startup we put together last year using the backbone of the trading business and making the customer better using the intel that we provide. So it's been good, because knowing that the tech works puts a lot of comfort in people that are trying to find someone that are going to do a better job than current energy managers. So the track record and the fact that most positions are public in Power, you can see what goes on and all that stuff. So it adds to the story, and it adds credibility to what we're doing. And it's also telling a story that the new problem that you're facing today in these new energy markets that are intermittent and digital have to be met with a new solution. And the incumbents right now don't have that new solution. And that's why we have an edge. When we talk to people, it's appealing to them.
So how is that different? So you're selling services, right? You're selling energy trading services. You've learned that. You've built an internal product. I'm going to say an internal facing product to support your activities. And now, a year ago, as you mentioned, there's CWP Energy Solutions, I think, is the name of that. I'm going to say that you're a software company. So now you're selling a product to the market. So can you tell our viewers a little bit how that transition is going? Because from my personal experience, changing business model, selling services versus selling a product is a big learning step. So how's that been for you, Alain?
I am still learning. If that's it is very different, and external stakeholders is a very different business. But when you're solving a real problem and you're not trying to sell win out there or just monetizing something that you build internally, you have real traction. So basically, when we got into this, we were always scratching our head saying, hey, we have something here in the business. This could be useful for other people, but we didn't really know how to put it out there. And then there's a bunch of different events that happened in the US in the past couple of years. And the main one that everybody's still talking about is Winter Storm Uri, right? It's been affecting a lot of people. It's created this huge deficit on the market. A lot of people with contracted assets thought they were risk-free, and they learned something the hard way, realizing that sometimes even though you're contracted, you need to actively manage your stuff. And the people they mandate to manage the energy are most of the time passive energy managers, where they schedule the energy as it's being generated without really taking a holistic view of what could be done using all the toolbox that you have, all the tools that you have in the toolbox of an energy trader. So we're bringing that to them. So they have more options to market their energy or to mitigate the risk that they have with their portfolio.
So are you effectively competing with yourself? If you're selling the tools that you are using as an energy trader in the market and offering them in the market, are you seeing that? Are you at risk of cannibalizing your own sales?
I love that question because I get it asked all the time, but let me put it this way. If you hire someone to build your house, you're going to hire an electrician and you're going to hire someone to put the drywall wall, right? Mm-hmm. They both have hammers. Are they competing with themselves or no?
That's an interesting way of looking at things.
Because we're not competing with ourselves, because everybody have different risk parameters and objectives on the market. So I could be using my stuff according to my risk policy and my objectives, and you could be using the same kind of tools with a different set of objectives and constraints that will yield to totally different results.
So I love this circumstance helped propel you forward. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that dialogue changed? Because that's always an interesting thing where I mean, we have the experience of fighting against the old school way in spreadsheets and trying to usurp the, I've got a spreadsheet that works. How did that dynamic change with your dialogue with customers versus before and after? Like, what was it your driven? Was it them driven? How did that really evolve?
I think that it was, the AI piece and all that stuff we're bringing that to the market. I think we're not the only ones anymore. But to answer your question, I think that there was a star customer that brought us here where they actually had a need with Winter Storm Uri. They were struggling with an issue and we came in without having anything. They just reached out to us because they knew us, saying, hey, this is more of a market risk kind of issue. We need your help. So we helped them navigate through that. And it kind of made our business plan very, very clear. We had the intention, as I mentioned earlier, to get whatever we did in the hands of customers. We didn't know how, but solving that issue for them made it very, very clear as to what our service or product would do and be. And now we're realizing that those guys weren't the only ones. We were just kind of lucky to be in the same, community, or that we knew each other so that they felt comfortable reaching out to get help.
So are you selling to the same client that you would typically were selling to before? Or did you realize you're now addressing different buyers within the same organization?
Yeah, no, it's at the beginning when we launched this, we had a strong bias towards price certainty products. So if market is really looking to find a replacement to long-term PPAs, and they are struggling with that. They're still operating under the old model that they want to finance this, and in order to finance this, they need a bankable PPA, and that's what they're looking for. So we came in with this hypothesis. So we designed a couple of different financial products, but we ended up in realizing that what people really want to do is reduce the volatility of their earnings. And people are a lot more aware of what they're leaving on the table if they sign a long-term deal. So there's an internal struggle right now with asset owners where they are struggling between bankability and increased profitability because they know how much money they're leaving on the table. So we need to find the right balance. So we moved from 100% price certainty products to a more, hey, we're going to help you manage the risk that you think you're facing in order that you leave as less cash as possible on the table as an organization. So we're effectively targeting their IRR, making it less risky and higher.
It's really interesting. This looks like something really interesting that could potentially come into play on some of those shorter term PPAs that were floating around for a while, those 10-year PPAs on a long-term assets. Are you seeing those type of things come into the play? Like, hey, we're hitting the end of the life of our PPA. How do we do this? How do we use this? And the inclusion of storage into these type of things.
Yes, I think you're touching an important point. I really see like the objective changes as soon as they're past the financing hurdle. Like if they can make it through the first 5-7 years, they get the initial loan, they get the tax equity partners, and then as soon as that expires, now they all of a sudden say, hey, merchant is a sexy thing. Maybe we should look at it.
I don't think I've heard those exact words before, but I'll trust you on that one.
I told you we're different.
Merchant sounds sexy. If I think of any conversations I've ever had in power, it's like, okay, we'll take the merchant risk is more the view of the market. It's like, okay, but I think what it's getting to is like you're quantifying risk and you're allowing people to manage their positions in a more proactive basis. So I think that's the shift that you're saying, is that people have always seen as merchant risk, and I guess you're framing it as a merchant opportunity. Is that a kind of way of looking at it?
Yes, I think the way we're looking at it is putting more tools in the hands of the people so that they have whatever it takes to navigate those risks. Because if you look at it from an asset owner point of view, they don't really have the tools. They're selling their energy, and that's all they care about. They want that. So they used to take the PPA so that their hedging mechanism was to sell in advance. But what we're selling them is the possibility of using other hedging tools that some are daily, some are monthly, some are yearly. That allows you to get the level of comfort that you want without having to leave all the profit for another party that's taking your risk from you.
Excellent. So what you're really providing a tool set. I really like that methodology to kind of empower customers to make kind of these decisions for themselves at the end of the day. And then you hinted to this a little bit earlier. You're not competing with yourself because they can use the tools for a completely different risk profile than you would normally do as a trader. And I think that leads me to a very interesting question, because there seems to be a lot of flexibility built in to the tool and to the approach that you're proposing. So how hard is that to make something flexible yet standard at the same time? Because you're trying to offer a product to the market and you're trying to be super flexible. And those things kind of crash all the time together. So what's your experience with that?
It's tough because the one thing I'm realizing is that each conversations are unique, even though they're similar. They all gravitate around the same issue, right? But they are all very different. Some are contracted in a very particular way. Some have equity partners. Some have, it's a consortium of people. They don't have the buy-in to take care of the problem unanimously. So I feel like it's not a cookie cutter thing. We need to have some level of customization that we do per client. Okay. And the way we do it is it's not a product that you log into and you're totally autonomous. It comes with the expertise. It comes with our feeling of the market. You get a daily sense that you have a trading arm in your company now when you deal with us. So it's really almost an outsourcing thing that we have with customers, but it's also an expertise thing where building the expertise internally, making sure they retain the right people, they see the right opportunities. It takes a lot of time and money. So we fast track all of that for them.
That's super interesting, especially building expertise within organizations. If you look at the labor shortage, especially in the renewables right now, I think that's a great value proposition. Full stop. How do people react to kind of, I guess that's like an ancillary benefit. It's like an adder to your value proposition.
It's a breath of fresh air, I think. And of course, I'm preaching to the choir here, but the reality is there's two problems with the industry of asset management. The first one, it's an opaque one. There's very little transparency about what the asset management is doing. Everything is proprietary. Everything is protected because they want to retain their customer that way. I see it the opposite way. It's right now the asset management is becoming less of an operational role, but more of a strategic role, given the amount of money that can be lost if it's not properly done. So companies are taking matter into their own hands, and they're asking more out of their energy manager. And what we're saying is we're going to be fully transparent, where the C-suite conversation that you guys are having right now, you're going to have it with more information in an educated manner. And we're going to share what we're doing with you, because even if we explain everything, it's still a niche job. You still need the experts to do it. And we have the experts to do it. The second portion, as I mentioned earlier, is the shift from passive management to active management. That is something that we do very well, that very few others people are going to do it. When they say they optimize, they make the best out of it, but what does that really mean? And then you fall into the first problem where it's not transparent. So you're trying to figure out how they're optimizing the assets for you, and you don't have an answer.
Well, it seems like you're really approaching the problem differently, where the historical asset management has always been about managing downside risk, whereas you're coming at this going, hey, just so you know, there's some upside here you can go tackle, which has always been the biggest problem with renewables, is that you had a degrading asset over time and subject to the weather, where you're saying there's a variable over here that you've never really talked about, which was changing your PPA and your inflow of cash. And this makes it a really interesting piece to try and change that paradigm that people have been under for so long. And how is this felt by the historical asset managers? Are any of them on board, or any of them jumping on, or is this more of a hold on, you're stealing my thunder type of thing?
I think it's a mix of both. I think there are some other players that are getting creative out there. I think this is probably going to be customer led. I think that the people that are getting more aware of what they can do and getting more sophisticated on the market risk side of things are going to demand more. So I think we're a bit early, but the conversations that we're having right now are very meaningful. And I think the fact that we don't have to change a huge organization in order to capture this new way of thinking is going to be a real advantage for us in this space.
So it's really more of a direct to consumer or to asset owner play at the end of the day, more than looking directly at the traditional asset managers.
Yeah, I think it's right now the debate is exactly what you said. The guys or girls that are managing assets are dissatisfied with either the results or the intel they get out of it. I spoke to a lot of asset owners that navigated the winter storm at a loss. They lost millions of dollars and they were demanding answers that they couldn't get them. So it's saying, hey, this is the way you're set up. This is how we perform normally. So they were not necessarily questioning the performance of the asset manager, but they're wondering, what are we doing wrong so that we thought we were properly hedged? So it's creating a sense of dissatisfaction where people are actually open to shopping these now, where it used to be an operational thing. Like, we're building this, we have the PPA, we just need someone to dump the energy every day on the market. Who can do that? Now it's a bit more.
So I think the really interesting thing to kind of bring it all together, and I'll try to summarize as best I can. You basically have a burning platform that's happened for you, right? You have this big winter storm. For those of you who wonder, think Texas was paralyzed. And basically, renewables were blamed heavily on top of things for that event, which is a whole other discussion. I think we could do a whole episode on that, but I think we'll skip ahead. But rather that this is giving you kind of your client's impetus, say, hey, this should never happen again. So that really gives you the driver forward, and you basically are trying to productize something you had internally, address it to that market. So for me, one question that I'd like to frame at the end, so you're productizing something, you're bringing it to market. How has that changed internally, the view, right? Because you're now externally facing rather than internally facing. And what kind of demands has that changed into your organization? Has that changed anything strategically or on your staffing, as an example?
Yeah, of course, because we needed to separate the two business, right? Because we need that degree of separation and independence so that people feel comfortable trusting. So it's really more a conversation of transparency and making sure people don't have any conflict of interest with the fact that there could be a company that trades and then a company that manages customer, because they're two separate businesses. So the client-facing side of the business really changed our way of managing perception in terms of what people think we are doing on the market. We're not speculating with customers' assets. We're agreeing on a goal with the customer, and then we're doing everything we can to achieve that goal. So if the goal is to mitigate risk, we're going to mitigate risk. If it's to increase revenue because they have more size in their risk budget, we're going to do that for them. So I think the main thing for us is to try to explain the mandate that it's not just a license to speculate with the customer's assets.
Cool. Well, Alain, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an incredible journey, and learning about what you're doing and what you're changing the renewables space out there, and how they see the world and how they can interact with the world. It's an exciting time, and I wish the best for you and your company.
Thank you, and thanks so much for having me, and hopefully we can accelerate this whole decarbonization thing so we get a better, greener planet.
Here.
Here. Thanks so much, Alain. Thanks for sharing your insights. And for those of you who are looking at productizing their offering, it's a long road, but can be very successful. So best of luck in that, Alain, and onwards.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Take care.